Welcome to the talk show where men unite, having conversations that inspire, ignite. From relationships to wellness, we cover it all. In this positive space, we're standing tall. We're the men of the talk show, spreading good vibes.
All right, welcome back. We're getting closer to the season finale of this show here. We're doing good with the numbers growing. Season 3, episode 17, 18. This is going to be a very good conversation. I have Azaniah here today. He's going to be telling his story and just the general stigmas that men in society face overall. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Azaniah, where you're from, what you do, and then we can get into the conversation. And thank you for being
No problem. Thanks for having me. So my name is Azaniah Israel, and I am in a couple of different spaces in my life where I'm an entrepreneur. I run a tech consulting firm focusing on AI, digital marketing, and IT integration, which Ciroc Consulting and WSI are the brands underneath that. I'm in ministry. I have a ministry called Ciroc Ministries and a fellowship group called I Am Repenting, running some nonprofits, president of the National Black MBA, and author of 2 books. One is a bestseller, Your Success Begins with Why, and then another one called Speak Unto the Children of Israel, Who Blessed You. So I try to have my hands in a lot of different places, but the ultimate goal is to be a servant to the kingdom, right? And be fruitful and multiply and bring forth good things into the community. And that's what really fuels me and gets me going.
So before we get into the topic of today, I just wanted to, you say you're a man of faith, right? I believe. All right. So what has been some of your beliefs about just things that you've been seeing that's going on in the world, and how has it affected your faith? How would you say?
If you're talking about current events and the things that are happening in society and what we're seeing on the news, it really just strengthens my faith, because these things are all prophesied in the Bible. When you really are studying the word, not from a perspective of just let me get the feel-good message, let me just hear what I want to hear, but when we're really studying it for the good and the bad, for the righteousness that comes with judgment as well, and how prophecy must be fulfilled, it really strengthens my faith. And it's a huge topic. It's something that I talk about every day, the current events. And right now, politically, we're in the part where the Bible says there are going to be wars and rumors of wars and pestilence and earthquakes and all of that stuff. And it's just like, I read about that, so I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked. Let me get myself together and make sure I'm ready for that judgment day and not play any games.
I've seen a lot that's going on in the world, and men are just really struggling right now. They may not know where their next meal is going to be coming from, or they might be going through questioning their faith and just different things of that nature. And it's not easy to wake up every day to always seeing Twitter posts from the president and things of that nature. Not to get too political, but it's just like sometimes you really feel like the world is over with. But on this talk show, we try to give men support and hope that you can't control the outside environment, but what you can do is control yourself. There's coping mechanisms that you can deal with to kind of not erase yourself from life, but just try to get you to be able to handle certain situations better in your life. We have a lot of therapists that came on this show throughout our years of doing it, over 3 years now. And I think it's a really testament to see the different techniques that they really offer and how they have helped heal their clients and things of that nature. But what I wanted to ask you was today, if you don't mind going into just a little bit about your faith and how you got to your faith, how you got to the religion that you got to in your life. Just share a little bit about that before we go into detail.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always grew up in the Christian church. I have plenty of family members that are in some type of position in the different churches. My great uncle founded a church right next door to the house I grew up in. I have an aunt who's a nun, another aunt who's a reverend, an uncle who's this, and a grandfather who's that. And growing up, I was there in the church primarily with my grandmother. When she passed away, what she instilled in me was left where I still wanted to go by myself, right, as a young kid. So I'd go to church still with her late husband. And at the time, it was just me. My mother wasn't going. My siblings probably they weren't going. They're younger, so they were staying with my mother at the time. And I'm going with my grandmother to church, and then I'm going with my grandfather to church. But as we got older, as a family, we all started going to a church and involved. We're in the choir as kids, and the drill teams, and the mother and her husband are deacons and deaconesses or along those lines. But I'm starting to really think for myself, right? Now I'm getting towards high school and I'm getting ready to go to college, and I have questions. Because at first I'm just doing what I'm told. Now I'm able to think and ask questions. And that began to be the problem and the solution at the same time. The problem was I'm asking questions because I'm seeing things that don't make sense. The people who are answering them are not giving good answers, not answering them at all, avoiding the question, which causes me to go seek even further outside sources. And when I went to college, I was able to be a part of a program that allowed us to study world religions. And so I would be in the Catholic service and a Muslim service and a Hindu service and studying them, right? Not that these were my faith, but these were things that I'm studying, which caused more confusion, but then brought me to more clarity. Because when you first studying it, it starts to look like, well, wait a minute, all these religions are the same. They're taking you to the same place at the end of the day. But then you start seeing why we have so many religions in the first place. And even within one religion, why there's so many denominations within that, and how what should be bringing us together really drives us further apart and distracts us from the ultimate goal. And that led me down a path of really finding myself and realizing that if I'm going to be a part of a belief system, I need to actually figure out why, what the relevance is behind it, what the truth is behind it, not just do what someone else is doing, not just listen to the pastor speak or whatever the religious leader is and just go with what he says, but learn it and understand it for myself, be able to speak it confidently and boldly, and feel confidence that I have made my calling and election sure, and that I'm going to get the end result that I'm expecting out of it. Then I realized something bigger, that we like to choose our religion, but the Most High, being the orchestrator that he is actually not giving us religion to follow. He has given culture and heritage. And you can pick what you want to pick, but there's something that's already meant for you, a path that's meant for you, should you choose to accept to go down that path. And that's what got me to where I am now. My faith is keeping the commandments in the faith of the Messiah. I don't like to view it as religion in the modern sense of the word religion. I don't like to view it as Christianity in the modern sense of the word Christianity, because those become buzzwords that everyone boxes you in and lumps you in a group. And it's like, well, this group of people, even though they say they're the same religion as you, they operate totally different. And so the essence of it is, I want to actually practice what I preach. I want to do what I say I'm going to do without excuse. And I'm guided by the principles that the Most High put in front of us through the prophets, through the apostles, through the Messiah, which leads me down the journey that I'm on now. And that's an important part of me, and that guides how I do business and how I deal with people on a daily basis. And it's more of a faith and a culture and a heritage than a religion, even though that word is a relevant word if used properly. Being even considered a Christian or a follower of air quotes Christ, if done properly, it makes sense. But I don't like using those buzzwords because it's just too big with less meaning.
That definitely makes a lot of sense now that I got some context about where you're from and where you're going to. How has your faith guided you to miss? Well, how has your faith guided you to just dealing with the world in general? You have a sense of, I'm going to believe that God is going to take me to higher places, even if things are, that I might, even if I might be struggling right now, or you have faith no matter what's going on in your life. Talk about
Where
that.
I am now, I have faith no matter what's going on. And the reason why is I am accepting God's will and
Mm-hmm.
not focused on my will. And when it's something that I want, my goal is to see how that aligns with God's will. Right. And so, how do I let that guide me through a day to day process? It's understanding that blessings come on His terms. I can want it all I want, but if it's not rooted with the right reasons, right? For example, let's just say I want to be rich. The
Yeah.
scripture tells you that I'm withholding good things from you because you want to consume them upon your lust. So why do I want to be rich? What will I do with it? How, being that I actually want to operate in a righteous way, what would I do with these riches? Because you got to look at what Solomon did with his, right? And so I often look at pro athletes and musicians and entertainers and say, wow, I can't believe that they're about to get this huge amount of money and then they do these silly things to mess it up, right? How you just get drafted in NFL and before training camp you getting busted on drug charges and going to jail. Or I forget his name. What was the defensive end that blew his hand up on the 4th of July with the firecrackers? Why would I entertain some of these things that are so detrimental to making me lose all that I've just been blessed with? But I step back and say, you know what? First off, everything that we see is not necessarily a blessing. It may look like one on the outside, but is it really? We're looking at this dollar as everybody thinks everything that's good or seems good comes from the Most High as a blessing. And they failed to remember that even the great Satan, and I say the great not to say it like I'm exalting him, but saying how he has positioned himself in front of the Messiah and said, I'll give you everything if you submit to me. So Satan can bless you
I
too.
think there was an old saying, though, sometimes a greatest blessing can be the devil's blessing or something like that.
We fail to think about that. So anytime somebody get a new job, a new house, a new whatever, look at God blessing me. He might be, and I'm not say he isn't. I'm just wanting you to question. You live this life where you're not deserving of anything. And let me explain what I mean by that. The Most High said, thou shalt not do X, Y, and Z. Let's go down the 10 commandments. And you're doing everything he said don't do. Let's go beyond the 10 commandments. Whatever it may be that the scriptures told you not to do, you did every one of them. And then you got a blessing at the end of it. It could be that who you're really worshiping, as the scriptures say, you worship your father, the devil, could be rewarding you for your works. And so I stopped looking at things like material gain as blessings. I started looking at they can be blessings, but the true blessing is a sound mind. The true blessing is a good heart. The true blessing is finding peace within the midst of chaos and having wisdom. I did mention Solomon a moment ago, and where he erred, but I also want to mention him and where he went right, right? So he prayed for wisdom. And the scripture said, because you prayed for wisdom, now I'm going to bless you with all these other things as well. That's what my prayer is, for wisdom. Because if you have wisdom, you can attain other things. You can fix other problems. You really have a lot going for you with that wisdom, that if you are focused on materials, right? Bless me with a new big house. I gave you this new big house, but all the problems that can now fit into it, were you prepared for that? Because you got to clean that big house. You got to pay the mortgage and the taxes on that big house. You got to protect it from the spirits that come in it. You might want to throw house parties all the time. Who knows who you're letting in the house now? Who knows what energy you're attracting? So I step back and I ask for wisdom. I want that first, so that whatever other thing that comes with it, I can properly utilize it to the edifying and the building of the kingdom.
And that's really great. But now I'm going to challenge you a little bit here, because I do this sometimes with my guests. Okay. So I know you're a man of faith and you believe strongly in God, but there's times where your life gets tested in your life. Things test you in your life, people, different events that come up in your life. How do you still stand firm in your convictions, even when things just go wrong left to right every time? Because I've known a friend and he goes through a problem every single week. Sometimes they say that God puts problems in our life just because he wants to see how far we can go in our life. But then there's other times that the devil is trying to create these problems in our life. So how do you, if someone's really Christian, how do you, like, I know you said you're going to walk through faith no matter what's going on in your life, but how do you not get angry? How do you not get frustrated when things just keep going wrong in your life? Talk me through that journey. How do you deal with that? How do you stand firm belief that no matter what's going on, I know God's got me, but then there's other times you questioning him. And I've done that a lot in my life. So take us through that mindset.
It really boils down to faith. And that's something that you have to exercise, right? You gotta. Did you play sports in your past, maybe growing up or even still?
Baseball, just
baseball, right?
A few months.
And when you played sports, you had a coach, and your coach made you do certain things so that when you saw this in the game, you were prepared for it, right? So it reminds me of Romans chapter 5, where it says that we have faith that works our patience and our experience hope, right? As you go through certain things, you're supposed to be gaining experience so that when you go through something again in the future, your experience can guide you through it, right? Your experience can help you and the next person, because a lot of times what you're going through is not for you. It's for you to help build somebody else up. And that then goes where someone else can build you up in your time of weakness. And so I don't look at these moments as, oh, everything's happening bad in my life. I look at these as the tests that are necessary to take me to the next level. I look at them as the moments where I have to show my strength to level up, right? So whatever, when I'm going through something bad or what feels bad, right? I pause and recognize, wait a minute, this is actually an opportunity. At first, it don't feel like, at first, like, oh my gosh, woe is me. Why is everything going wrong in my life? And then I catch myself and say, oh, thank you, Holy Spirit. Thank you for this opportunity to go through this so that I can grow from it and be better after it. When I played sports, I hated running. Nobody wants to do just the running for the sake. Well, some people like that. That's them. Me personally, I can run on the court. I can run on the field in the middle of the play, but I don't want to just go run miles just as it. But that's endurance, right? That's endurance training. Don't the scriptures say that this is a race that you have to have endurance for? This is not a sprint, but a marathon. And so that's my perspective on things. And I didn't always have that perspective, but I grew to it. And once I locked in on that perspective, it's kind of hard to make me feel any other way. It's every time I see it as an opportunity. And when it comes to you thinking that maybe the devil's involved, right? Satan's involved. He is. Because look at what happened with Job. Job was tested, but before he was tested, Satan came to God and said, let me test him. Have you considered your servant Job? The only reason he serves you is because you didn't bless his hand in everything that he does. Let me prove to you that he really not about that life. And the Most High said, sure. The only thing you can't do is kill him. He killed his family, his children. He took his business and he made his wife nag him and disrespect him. But throughout all of that, Job didn't sin. So there are conversations being had about, hey, you say you're a man of faith, prove it. And guess what? At the end of it, he was blessed. You thought he was blessed before. He was blessed abundantly above that after. And if that's the way that things work, let me put myself in position so that the blessings that come after are greater than what I currently have.
That's definitely a good take on it. I'm glad that you still stand firm in your beliefs. That's a good thing. But I'm still going to challenge you a little bit here, just a little bit. So I know that you still stand firm in your belief in everything that you believe in your religion that backs you up to that point. But there is times where, men are going through a lot of mental health issues. And we're going to try to move into this topic now. There's stigmas in life that really weighs men down. And it's all men of walks of life, because I've seen it. I've been doing it for 3 years. And I've seen men at their lowest that want to really X themselves out of this life. And I've seen men that's at their highest. It has everything going good for them. And then I've seen men in between. Like they don't know what they want to do, but they're not really struggling in their life either. So I've seen it from all different points of views. So now my question is, if they walk in, if they have their beliefs in God and that He's going to get them to the next level, no matter where they're at in their life. Sometimes people question things when things don't always go their way. And then sometimes people like, is there even a God up there when I'm doing all this praying and I'm doing all these nights of sacrificing, staying up to work on different things, but nothing is going how I plan or how I envision. So I know there's a saying that walk by faith, but not by sight. Sometimes it could be so disheartening that men are putting in all this work, but they don't see the fruits of their labor. You speak about that a little bit. How can they continue to believe in something that maybe they believed in all these years, but yet their prayers and things are not being answered how they want it to?
Well, what you just said at the end, their prayers may not be being answered how they want them to. I think that's the key to this whole question, because one thing that I said earlier is not my will, but thy will. If we're following the Messiah, even when he was on the cross, he said, thy will be done. Because when Satan tempted him, he could have showed his power then. Throw yourself off of this mountain and prove to me that you're the Son of God. When he was on the cross, he didn't have to go through that. He's a all-powerful being, right? But he was doing the will of the Father. And so I think one thing that we mess up on, for those of us who say that we are believers and that we have faith, is our faith is according to the precept of men rather than actually what God has said in the book. And I know one of the reasons why that happens is, even one, we're getting taught it in church and not reading for ourselves. But then for those who are reading for ourselves, we're not actually diving into what is being written with a little bit of intent to study. We're glossing over it and reading it like a storybook, like a fairy tale. And so we've been served up in this society. I would say we've been served up this version of Christianity that is very much pie in the sky. You have to wait until you get to heaven to get these benefits, and that's after you die. And then we don't put the works in that bring forth the blessing. So when we pray for something, we just want it to fall from heaven. When in reality, when I say I want, let's just say I want the riches, right? I'm going to have to do the work that then brings forth the money. A house ain't going to fall out the sky. I have to build it. But through prayer and through faith, I should then expect that I'm going to be equipped with the wisdom. That was what I said you should pray for, not money. The wisdom to be able to build. Now I have enough understanding how I'm going to need X amount of dollars to acquire this land. And I know how to acquire the dollars that are needed to acquire this land. But guess what? I got to have permits. I could just go and pay another group of people to do it for me. They might scam me. Who knows? So I have to have enough wisdom to put forth people in place to do their job. I may not be the carpenter. I may not be the architect. I may not be able to lay the cement. However, did I prepare myself in advance before I started building this house to have a sufficient enough to build the house?
And they say work without faith is dead, right?
Is dead. But we live in a world where all you got to do is have faith. And that's what I was told as a young boy going into high school, where I started asking those questions. I'm looking at the scriptures, and from Genesis to Revelation, it tells you keep the commandments. But Christianity doesn't really speak like that. And then when I asked, I said, why does it keep saying keep the commandments? Oh, you don't have to worry about that. All you got to do is have faith. Genesis to Revelation. Here, the patience of the saints and those who keep the commandments. In Revelation, it's saying keep the commandments. Now you talk to people, they've upgraded a little bit. You got to keep the commandments, but only the New Testament commandments, right? Really only what it said in Matthew with the two greatest commandments: love your neighbor and love God. But wait, it says on these two hang all the law and the prophets. So it's taking you right back to the laws in the Old Testament, right back to the prophets. There's something you can learn from them. So your question was regarding someone who is struggling with their prayer not being answered, and they feel like, it's God, are you up there? Well, if you listen to gospel music, you probably heard this song, He's an on-time God. He may not come when you want him, but he'll be right on time. Like, we think because things don't happen on our schedule, it's not happening. But you're not ready for certain things yet, perhaps, and you need to be built up. If I give it to you now, you'll squander it. Maybe you need time to be built up and be prepared for that. Maybe.
Yeah, and I definitely do agree with that. You have to still put in the work. You can have this big, marvelous 10-year plan, but if you don't have resources or you don't have a plan to put that plan into action, it's going to all fall apart in the end. Even if God does bless you, you won't know what to do with it. Just like
Right.
if you won $1 million and you've been broke all your life, how are you going to keep that?
You'll
Like,
be
how
broke
are you
again
going
soon.
to, how are you going to manage that if you
Right.
never had money like that before?
What the scriptures say, he who is faithful over little will be faithful over much. Right? In those parable of the talents, you have to show that you can handle what you have before I give you more. A lot of people cannot handle what they currently have, and they want more. And for many of us, I'm a marketer, right? Digital marketing is one of my trades. And so you're seeing everything on TikTok and Instagram, these videos that are really making you feel like you're not doing something because you're not a millionaire at age 21. Because you're not driving a Lamborghini already. You don't have big houses. You're not traveling the world on private jets, that you're not doing anything. But the scriptures say that the deceived and the deceiver are his. And you're letting social media deceive you into thinking that this is the blessing for you when it's not. That's not where you are currently in life. And they're not either. They're faking it. They're going to a studio and pretending to be on a jet.
So
or they're running up a credit card and then filing for bankruptcy and scamming, right?
Especially those PPP loans. Everybody was
bring it out.
So now I want to bring it into our last little bit of conversation here. Probably two questions that I wanted to ask you. And I know you talked a lot about faith and just letting it guide you through the whatever you're going to go through in your life is going to happen, but you still have that firm belief that God is there for you no matter what. But there are people that have mental illnesses in the world, and they might not be able to think for themselves, or they may not be able to just trust in everything. There is a lot of times where people get mad because they might have they might have faith, but they still don't know why God is questioning, or why God is doing or moving a certain way. And I've done this a lot in my life. I question a lot that God has done for me. And for the most part, I'm grateful. But there is certain things that I still want that I haven't gotten in my life. And I know that just takes time. That's just going to take time. And me putting in the work so I can see the fruits of my labor. But there is some people that just like, they've been praying for years and nothing has changed for them. And so how do you stand firm in your belief even when things is just not going to be able to, when you don't see anything happening for years and people are ready to give up, they're ready to kill themselves? How do you, like, do you just continue to keep waiting, or do some people convert into another religion? You never know what's going to happen. It's so many questions that people have that, I know you're never supposed to question God and stuff like that, but why can't we never question him? You know, why is it such a thing that we can't never question? I know he is the powerful one being and he can make anything happen just like that. But then there's also these thoughts, I don't see nothing happening and I'm working hard all my life.
First off, I don't agree with the sentiment that you can't question God.
You don't.
I believe that you have to learn how to respectfully ask the question. All right. And that's a part of seeking salvation, if you will. So why God? Why? Even the Messiah on his dying deathbed said, "Why hast thou forsaken me?" But it wasn't for in the sense of, you're not giving me what I want, right? He was allowing the will to be done. He was actually fulfilling prophecy in that moment anyway. But I think that switching to another religion doesn't help. That's the problem. We're in religion. I said earlier in the conversation, religion, the way that we currently view it, modern society, is not the route I want to go. I would say that it's not correct because you're subscribing to a societal man-made belief system that is not rooted necessarily in what the Messiah originally intended, and what God originally intended. So I try to step back from all of that. But when it comes to the mental health side of things, you open this door up for us to talk from a spiritual standpoint. But even in the mental health section of a conversation, the spirituality comes into play. I think there's a big difference between mental illness and poor mental health. Right? So everyone has mental health. That doesn't mean it's positive or negative. Right? But when you have poor mental health, you may be experiencing things that are in your control fairly easily, right? So you just need a little bit more sleep, right? You need to do a little more self-care, right? So we talk about burnout. That's a mental health issue. But when we talk about certain mental illness, we see lunatic in the Bible, right? That's a mental illness. But what was said about these different spirits that we were in that we call mental illness, the Bible calls spirits. Some cannot go out but by prayer and fasting. Some of us are not putting in the work to resolve the issue that we have, which may mean stop eating the things that we're eating that are bringing in the spirits that we have. Remember when he cast the demons out of the man into the pigs and they jumped off there's a message in that. There was also the story about how when you get rid of that spirit, you clean the house and you sweep it clean, and the spirit is wandering around seeing where it can find, and then it comes back and say, oh, look, you've cleaned the place for me, thank you. And then you invite them right back in. So we have to recognize what spirit we're in. These mental illnesses that we call them, a lot of times it's more about the demons that are within us that we haven't let go than it is about really truly needing medication, right? Than needing I'm not saying don't go to the doctor at all. I'm not saying forsake the physician. I read from the Apocrypha, and it's a very good scripture that I read every time going to the doctor that tells you that you should pray and go to the physician. The physician's hands are guided by the Most High, and you have need of him. So I'm not against the doctor at all, but I'm saying couple your going to the doctor with your spirituality, with your faith, and grow it in such a way that you are willing to fast from things that are probably causing your problem. Yeah, I mentioned food. There's a reason why the Bible tells you don't eat pork in Leviticus 11. And in Malcolm X's, Denzel Washington's movie where he played Malcolm X, in that scene where he was telling the young lady at the museum that if you eat the swine, you'll take on the characteristics of the swine. That's part of our mental health issues as well, is what we're consuming, whether it be food, whether it be television and music and the people that we're around. We're consuming these things that are messing up our minds. We're supposed to have a sound mind, be sober-minded, but we're consuming drugs and things that are intoxicating our minds. So we have to be able to abstain from certain things that are causing some of our issues, and we don't know that they're causing. The root cause is sometimes buried deep within us, and we're going to have to discover it. So you may need some therapy and have someone help you uncover these things. You may need some medication that helps suppress certain thoughts that give you the opportunity to uncover these things.
And there's one more question I want to ask you too here before we wrap up today. They say pray things away. I'm a big firm believer that if you can pray your problems away and you ask God, he will eventually do it. So do you believe in the notion that prayer actually does eventually help people, or we still have to still put in the work ourselves in order to get it? Because if God said if you make one step, he'll make the next. But do you Do you believe in that, or is that just another notion that man made up?
No, I believe in it. I think what man has done is remove some of the other things that go with it, maybe oversimplified it, because we just talked about faith without works is dead a moment ago. So prayer goes right in along with that. There's some work that goes with it. So when you read First Kings chapter 8, it talks about pray, and then it talks about the fact that you have to forsake, you have to confess, you have to actually admit that you are wrong and that you probably knew you were wrong and did it anyway, despite knowing the consequences. The scriptures say that you're perverse. You have to admit that. So when you pray, you can't just pray and then just, again, hope it's going to fall from the sky. Now put in the effort to abstain from the things that are withholding the blessings from you. That should be in your prayer. Pray for forgiveness. If you're praying for forgiveness of what? What did you do wrong? That's why the law is so important, because you would have not known sin if it was not for the law. But the laws of God are highlighting what sin is. So how do we say, if we're Christians, right? How do we say that we're all sinners, but then you don't identify as sin? And then you don't make the effort to stop doing that sin, which really there's a direct correlation between the sin you do and the issues that you have, right? A good number of us are in we're overweight, we have diabetes, we have high blood pressure, we have heart troubles. Well, guess what? That's why there are dietary laws. It tells you in the Bible, eat a certain way. We're overeating. That's gluttonous. Well, that's why you overweight and got diabetes. That's the sin. And this is the judgment for that sin. You want to revert, you want to be healthy, stop doing the sin, eat overeating, or whatever the other things. Because when you go to the doctor, there's going to be certain things that they tell you, hey, cut the pork out of your diet. You've been eating bacon all your life. It's good. And I just want to eat it because it tastes good, but it kills you. Don't be mad when you at the doctor all the time taking a whole variety pack of pills when you won't do the things that God has already ordained as good things for you to do.
All right, and on that note,